The Alpha King locked the traitor's collar around the servant girl's throat to make the court watch treason close its teeth. That was how Lord Chancellor Morvayn said it. Not execution, not cruelty. A lesson. The royal hall of Blackmere had gathered before dawn, its long stone pillars wrapped in black wolf banners, its silver braziers burning with cold blue flame. Outside, winter rain struck the high windows like fingernails against glass. Inside, every noble, commander, healer, and counselor had come to see whether a traitor's blood could still pretend to serve a king. Nara Vale stood in the center of the hall with her wrists bound behind her, her gray servant dress torn at the shoulder, her dark hair half loosened from its braid. There was blood at the corner of her mouth where a guard had struck her for speaking before being asked. She kept her chin low, not from shame, but because if she looked at the faces around her too long, she might remember she had once cleaned their rooms, washed their cups, carried their letters, warmed their chambers, and learned which of them slept peacefully after condemning innocent men. They had not come to see justice. They had come to see relief. If the traitor's collar killed her, then the old story would remain useful. Her father had betrayed Blackmere. Her father had sold the Eastern Pass to the enemy. Her father had caused 300 wolves to die under red snow. Her father had deserved the rope, and Nara, his only daughter, deserved whatever small humiliations remained. The collar lay on a black velvet cushion in Lord Chancellor Morvayn's hands. It was an ugly thing, forged from dark iron and moon silver, with 7 inward-facing teeth and a hinge shaped like a wolf's open jaw. Across its surface ran old oath script, words hammered into metal until they looked less written than bitten. Truth binds. Falsehood tightens. Treason has no breath. Every child in Blackmere knew the collar's law. If placed around a guilty throat, it tightened until the traitor confessed or died. If placed around an innocent throat, it remained loose and silent. That was what the priests taught. That was what the council repeated. That was what the kingdom believed, because relics were easier to trust than witnesses who could be buried. Nara looked at the collar and felt no comfort. Relics could be lied about too. At the far end of the hall, Alpha King Kael Veyr sat on the black wolf throne, one hand resting on the carved armrest, his other hand hidden beneath a dark fur mantle. He was 32, feared from the northern packs to the salt border, with black hair, hard cheekbones, and eyes like winter gold. He did not look like a man who doubted the court beneath him. He looked like a king built from command. But his wolf shadow told a different story. It should have stretched behind the throne, vast and dark, breathing with the Alpha's power. Instead, it lay thin against the stone wall, ribs faintly visible beneath smoky fur, its head lowered as if listening for a sound no one else could hear. The court called it restraint. Nara had spent too many nights changing bandages in the lower infirmary to believe that word when men used it around pain. The king's wolf was dying. No one said it aloud. Beside Kael stood Lady Veyra, the council's favored future Luna. She wore a white gown edged in black fox fur, her pale hair braided with silver oath thread, and around her throat rested a necklace of small blue truth stones. Each stone held a faint glow like frozen breath. She watched Nara with a face arranged into pity, so perfect it could have been painted. When Morvayn lifted the collar, one truth stone dimmed, only for a breath. Then it brightened again, as if it had swallowed something before anyone could hear it. Nara saw. So did Morvayn. His hand shifted quickly, blocking the necklace from the king's view. Not quickly enough. Kael's golden eyes narrowed. "What did that stone do?" he asked. Lady Veyra's expression did not change. "It reacted to the collar, Majesty. Truth. Stones are sensitive around treason relics." Morvayn bowed his head. A natural resonance. Nara almost laughed, though her mouth hurt too much. Natural. Courts loved that word when they wanted theft to sound old. Morvayn turned toward her. "Nara Vale, daughter of Captain Edrin Vale, do you stand ready to answer the caller?" Nara lifted her head. The room sharpened. They wanted fear, tears, pleading. They wanted her to defend her father badly enough to look desperate. They wanted the daughter of a dead traitor to give them one more performance of disgrace. She gave them none. "My father died answering men who had already decided what truth should sound like." A hiss passed through the hall. Morven's eyes hardened. "Your father Sold the Eastern Pass. My father died saying the pass was opened from inside Blackmere. Enough. The word cracked through the hall. Not from Morvain. From Kael. Everyone looked to the throne. The Alpha King leaned forward, and the blue flames in the braziers bent toward him. What did he say? Kael asked. Nara's heart struck hard. No one had ever asked that in public. Not once in 8 years. Morvain stepped in smoothly. Majesty, the traitor's final ravings were recorded and judged. I asked her. The Chancellor went still. Nara felt the danger of that small gap in power. It opened like a door in a burning room. She could step through and die on the other side, but at least she would die having spoken. He said the Eastern horn never sounded, she said. He said the council bell rang before the enemy crossed. He said he saw blue fire on the tower, not red. He said Blackmere was not betrayed by the wolves at the pass. Kael's fingers tightened once on the throne arm. His wolf shadow lifted its head. Only slightly, but Nara saw. So did Lady Veyr. Another truth stone at her throat dimmed. This time, the king saw it. Remove her necklace, Kael said. Vera's hand flew to her throat. Majesty? The stones dim when she speaks. Morvain stepped forward. Majesty, with respect, this is a collar rite. Disrupting a Luna candidate's truth, stones during a treason hearing may be read as distrust of the council's witness. Kael's gaze did not soften. Good. The hall went silent. Morvain's jaw worked once. Then he smiled, thin and careful. Of course, let the collar settle the matter first. If the servant is innocent, we may examine all related relics. There it was. The old court trick. Put the lowest throat under iron first. Nara looked at the collar. 7 teeth. Inward-facing. Waiting. Kael's gaze moved to her bound wrists. Unbind her. Morvain's eyes flashed. The accused may resist. She is surrounded by half my war court. She is a traitor's daughter. She is not yet condemned. That word yet should have frightened her. It did. But it also meant the king had not given Morvain the ending before the collar touched her. A guard cut the rope around her wrists. Nara flexed her numb fingers once and let her hands fall to her sides. She did not rub the rope burns. She would not give the court the satisfaction of seeing her tend what it had done. Morvain approached with the collar. Up close, she saw something that made her stomach turn cold. The inner rim of the iron held scratches. Not random marks. Letters. A name, carved so small only someone standing beneath the teeth could read it. Nara Vale. Her father. Nara stopped breathing. Morvain saw her face. His smile deepened. Yes, he murmured, too softly for the court. His final oath made strong iron. Your father's mistake, Morvain whispered, was thinking truth mattered. After the court had survived the lie, the world narrowed. Her father's final oath. Not his confession. Not his treason. His oath. The collar was made from what he had dyed, saying. Morvain lifted the iron around her throat. Nara almost stepped back. Almost. Then she thought of her father on the scaffold, voice raw, still trying to warn the king's court as the rope waited behind him. She thought of 8 years scrubbing floors under men who called him traitor because it kept their own throats clear. Nara lifted her chin. Then let my father's oath finish speaking. Morvain's hand paused. Only for a breath. Then the traitor's collar closed around her neck. The hall held its breath. The 7 teeth should have turned inward. They did not. The iron went warm. Then bright. Nara felt the collar lift slightly from her skin, refusing to bite. The oath script across its surface flared blue-white, and a sound came from the metal like a wolf drawing breath after years under snow. Morvain's smile vanished. The collar spoke, not loudly, not gently, through every throat in the royal hall. Truth binds. A counselor near the left, dais choked. Then another. Then 3 more. Men in black council robes grabbed at their throats as invisible iron tightened around them. Lady Veyr gasped, her truth stone necklace flashing blue and then black. One truth stone cracked. From inside it came the faint sound of a horn that had never been allowed to ring. Morvain staggered back, one hand at his neck, eyes wide with disbelief. The collar around Nara's throat remained loose. Alpha King Kael rose from the throne. His dying wolf shadow stood behind him for the first time, and from inside the traitor's collar came her father's voice. My daughter did not inherit treason. She inherited the throat that can survive it. The first counselor fell to his knees before anyone in Blackmere remembered how to breathe. Lord Hadron, master of war levies, clutched his throat with both hands, as if invisible fingers had sunk beneath his skin. His black council robe dragged through the blue flame light, the silver wolf pins at his collar shaking with every strangled gasp. No iron circled his neck, no guard touched him. Yet the sound coming from his mouth was the exact sound the court had expected from Nara. The traitor's collar rested loose against her skin. Not gentle, awake. Its old oath script burned blue-white around her throat, and the voice inside it was no longer only her father's. Beneath Edrin Vale's rough, final words moved something older. A wolf law forged before courts learned how to polish lies. Truth binds. Lord Hadron tried to crawl backward. The invisible collar tightened. Kael descended the throne steps slowly, his dark fur mantle dragging behind him, golden eyes fixed on the choking counselor. His dying wolf shadow moved with him now, thin but standing, ears lifted toward the sound trapped in Hadron's throat. "Speak," Kael commanded. Hadron shook his head. The blue veins at his temples darkened. Morvayn recovered first. He raised one hand toward the guards. "Restrain the servant! The relic is being corrupted." No guard moved, not because they disobeyed him, because the traitor's collar turned once around Nara's throat and every sword in the hall began to hum. Nara felt it in her teeth. The iron did not ask her for power. It did not pour strength into her limbs. It did not make her brave. It simply stood between her throat and the court's hunger, and for the first time in 8 years, something ancient had decided her voice was worth guarding. Lady Vera's hand remained frozen at her necklace. The cracked truth stone still whispered. A horn that had never been allowed to ring, faint, far away, buried under years of silence. Kael heard it. His gaze cut to her throat. "Remove it," he said. Vera's lips parted. "Majesty, the stone is damaged. If I touch it while the collar is active." "Remove it." Morvayn stepped between them. "The Luna candidate's truth stones are sanctified. They cannot be handled during an open treason rite." Kael did not look at him. "Then you remove it." Mordvine went still. The command settled over the hall like winter over a battlefield. A small, ugly satisfaction moved through Nara before she could stop it. Morvayn had placed iron at her throat with steady hands. Now his own fingers hesitated before a necklace. Vera looked at him, not with fear, with warning. That was when Nara understood something that made her stomach turn colder than the collar ever could have. Vera was not merely protected by the council. She was part of its lock. Hadron choked again, and this time words tore out of him. The eastern horn was sealed. The hall cracked open with sound. Commanders turned. Soldiers whispered. A gray-haired wolf captain near the third pillar went pale as death. Nara looked at the counselors choking around her. "If my father lied," she said, "why is his oath choosing you?" The traitor's collar warmed at her throat, not tightening, only listening. Kael's voice dropped. "By whose order?" Hadron clamped his mouth shut. The invisible collar tightened. His knees slammed harder into stone. "By whose order?" Kael repeated. Hadron's eyes rolled toward Morvayn. That was all the answer the hall needed. Morvayn lifted his chin. A frightened man will look anywhere when pain makes him desperate. The traitor's collar pulsed. A second counselor cried out. Then a third. Invisible iron closed around their throats one after another, selecting them with a patience more terrifying than rage. Nara turned, breath shallow, as men who had sat high above her for years dropped like felled branches around the court. Not all of them, only some. That made it worse. The relic was not punishing rank. It was choosing lies. Kael came to stand before Nara, close enough that she could see the rain caught in the black strands of his hair, close enough that his wolf shadow stretched across the floor and touched the hem of her torn dress without touching her skin. He looked at the collar, then at the blood drying near her mouth. "Does it hurt you?" he asked. The question was low, not soft, careful. Nara had been asked many things in Blackmere. Where is the spare key? Who gave you permission to stand there? Did your father teach you to betray kings? Do traitors' daughters dream of rope? No one in the royal hall had ever asked whether she hurt. She almost hated him for asking too late. "No," she said. The collar warmed, as if approving the word. Kael's eyes sharpened. "Can you remove it?" Nara lifted one hand toward the hinge. Morvain shouted, "Do not let her touch it." The collar flashed. Morvain gagged. For the first time, the Chancellor's voice broke. His fingers flew to his throat, but the invisible pressure did not fully close. Not yet. It only warned him, like teeth resting against skin. Nara's fingers stopped just below the hinge. She looked at Kael. "I do not think it is finished." Behind him, his wolf shadow gave a faint, broken growl. The sound rolled through the stone. Every wolf-blooded person in the hall felt it. Heads lifted, shoulders tightened. Some of the older warriors lowered their eyes, not in submission, but in recognition. The Alpha King's wolf had not growled in court for nearly 3 years. Kael heard it too. Pain crossed his face too quickly for most to see. Nara saw. So did Morven. And hatred, sudden and sharp, moved through the Chancellor's eyes. Not fear of Nara. Fear that the King's wolf had answered her father's oath. Veyr stepped forward with controlled grace, though one truth stone at her throat hung cracked and dark. "Majesty, this is becoming dangerous. The servant may be a vessel for forbidden oath, magic. If her bloodline can awaken relics, she may have been placed in the palace for this moment." The cracked truth stone whispered the horn again, softer this time, as if disagreeing. There it was. Aklinali, not Traitor's daughter anymore. Weapon. Nara's throat tightened, but not from the collar. Kael turned slowly toward Veyr. "Placed by whom?" Veyr lowered her gaze just enough to look respectful. "Enemies who know your wolf has weakened." The hall stilled. Nara felt the shift. Some truths were not supposed to be said near thrones. Kael's face became unreadable. His wolf shadow wavered behind him, ribs flickering like smoke. Morvain found his breath again and seized the opening. "Majesty, the Eastern Pass betrayal did not merely cost soldiers. It began the sickness in your wolf. Captain Edrin's treason wounded the kingdom's oath line. If his daughter now awakens his forged collar, then perhaps the wound has returned to finish what he began." The words were elegant. Terrible. Useful. Nara felt the court begin to turn. She had watched it happen all her life. One impossible sign could free her for a breath, but men like Morvain only needed to rename it before fear did their work for them. Morvain's gaze kept falling to the hinge of the collar, not its teeth. The collar stirred. Her father's voice rasped from the iron again. "Wrong wound." Every flame in the hall bent sideways. Kael went still. The collar's script rearranged around Nara's throat, glowing brighter over each hammered word. Truth binds faded. Falsehood tightens faded. A new line rose from beneath the iron, hidden until now. A wolf sickens when its oath is fed a lie. Kael's hand opened at his side. His wolf shadow took one step toward Nara. Morvain saw it and moved. Fast. He snatched a dagger from the belt of the nearest guard and drove it toward Nara's throat, aiming not at her flesh, but at the hinge of the collar. Kael caught his wrist before the blade landed. The impact cracked, like breaking bone. The hall erupted. Morvain froze, dagger trembling inches from Nara's neck. Kael held him with one hand, but his gaze had gone beyond the Chancellor, beyond the court, beyond the 8 years of polished history. "You knew," Kael said. Morvain's lips curled despite the pain. "I preserved your reign." The collar blazed white. All 7 teeth turned outward. Not into Nara's throat, toward the court, and from inside Lady Veyr's cracked truth stone, the buried eastern horn finally sounded. Not faintly now, fully. A warning call filled the royal hall, raw and desperate. The horn Blackmere had been told never rang. At the sound, Kael's wolf shadow collapsed to its knees. Nara's collar spoke in her father's voice. The king's wolf did not sicken from treason. It sickened from believing the men who hid the horn. The eastern horn did not fade. It lived inside Lady Veyr's cracked truth stone, raw and wounded, echoing through the royal hall until even the carved wolves along the pillars seemed to listen. Kael's wolf shadow remained on its knees behind him. Not bowed, struck. That sight frightened the court more than the choking counselors. Blackmere had seen kings bleed, had watched commanders carried home from battle with their ribs open and their wolves howling through their mouths. But no one had ever seen the Alpha King's wolf collapse because a buried horn finally remembered how to sound. Kael released Morvaine's broken wrist. The Chancellor staggered back, his face pale but his eyes still sharp. "Seal the hall," Kael said. Morvaine lifted his head. "Majesty, seal it." The royal guards obeyed. The great doors boomed shut. Iron bars dropped into place. The nobles trapped inside began whispering at once. A court loved judgment when it had exits. Without them, judgment began to look back. Kael turned toward Nara. The traitor's collar still glowed around her throat, loose enough for breath, bright enough that every eye kept returning to it. She hated that. Even protected, she was still being watched like an object with teeth. "Can it harm you?" Kael asked. "I do not know." The collar warmed once. Kael noticed. "It answers truth. It answers more than that." Nara did not know how she knew until the words had already left her mouth. The hall no longer sounded like voices to her. It sounded like throats. Some clear, some knotted, some sealed so tightly each breath scraped. She looked at Lord Hadron, still kneeling. His throat sounded like rusted wire. She looked at Veyr. "Silk pullover a blel." Then she looked at Morvaine. Nothing. No scrape, no knot, no pulse of guilt. His throat was silent. That frightened her most. Morvaine saw her looking and smiled through pain. A cursed servant hears ghosts and calls it law. The collar did not choke him. Kael's gaze sharpened. "What is it?" Nara forced herself to answer. "I can hear lies in their throats." The hall went colder. "And his?" Kael asked. Nara swallowed. "I hear nothing." Morvaine spread his uninjured hand. "Because I have not lied." The collar stayed still. Some nobles seized on that silence at once. Veyr stepped forward, her cracked necklace dim against her throat. "You see, Majesty? The relic punishes panic, not guilt. It spares Lord Morvaine because he stands clean before it." The cracked truth stone whispered the eastern horn again. "Softer, bitter." Nara looked at the necklace. "Your stones disagree with you." Veyr's eyes flashed, but only for a breath. Then pity returned to her face like a veil lowered over a knife. "Poor girl, you have lived beneath your father's shame so long that every sound must feel like rescue." The collar pulsed. Another truth stone cracked. From inside came a second sound. Not the eastern horn. A bell. Low, formal, royal. Kael's face changed. The council bell. An old wolf captain near the third pillar stepped forward. "Majesty," Captain Edrin Vale said the council bell rang before the eastern horn should have. The record called it battlefield confusion. Kael looked toward the record steps. Who wrote that record? Silence fell too fast. The collar turned outward. A young clerk screamed as invisible iron closed around his throat. Ink stained his fingers. Terror hollowed his eyes. "Speak," Kael ordered. The clerk sobbed. "I copied what I was given." "By whom?" His gaze flicked to Veyr. "Not Morvaine. Veyr." The court shifted. Her hand rose toward her necklace. "Do not touch it," Kael said. Her fingers stopped. "The first record came from the Luna house," the clerk whispered. Nara stared at Veyr. The Luna candidate's beautiful face did not break, but something behind her eyes moved, quick and ugly. Morvaine spoke sharply. "The Luna house preserves ritual records. That is not guilt." The collar still did not touch him. Then Nara understood. Morvaine had not escaped because he was innocent. He had escaped because he had made others speak the lies for him. Kael turned to her. "Can the collar reach a lie if the liar never spoke it?" Before she could answer, her father's voice moved through the iron, lower than before. "Truth may hide in another throat. Oath remembers the hand." The 7 teeth opened outward again. This time, they did not point at throats. They pointed at hands. Across the hall, men and women cried out as black letters burned into their palms. Not all palms. Only the ones that had signed, sealed, copied, carried, altered, or buried the Eastern Pass record. Sealed horn. Changed bell hour. Removed red flare. Buried Edrin Vale's warning. The words spread from hand to hand until they formed a black-blue path across the floor. A path leading to Veyr. Her necklace flashed black. Kael stepped toward her, Take it off. For the first time, Veyra's perfect pity failed. Majesty, she whispered. The truth stones cracked one by one, releasing fragments of sound. A horn smothered beneath cloth, a bell rung too early, men running in the wrong direction, wolves dying at a gate that should have opened. Nara looked at the black letters burning across the palms. Then follow the hands. The collar warmed against her throat, as if it had waited 8 years for her to say it. The burned words brightened. The path moved past Veyra's feet, under the Luna dais, toward the sealed side door behind her. Not merely to her. Beneath her, Veyra turned and ran. No one leaves with the truth still locked around their throat, Kael said. The command struck the hall like a battlefield order. The guards rushed forward, but Veyra tore a silver pin from her hair and stabbed it into the lock. The side door opened onto darkness that should not have been there. Not a passage. Aster. Cold air spilled into the hall, carrying the smell of old blood, buried iron, and oaths that had died before reaching a mouth. Morvayn shouted, "Close it." But the traitor's collar spoke over him. Below, Nara stared into the stairwell. From beneath the royal hall came the sound of many collars breathing at once. The stair beneath the Luna dais did not descend like a passage. It dropped like a sentence no one had dared finish. Nara stood at its mouth, with the traitor's collar warm against her throat, listening to the darkness breathe. The sound was not wind, it was iron. Dozens of iron mouths opening and closing in the deep, each one carrying a broken piece of someone who had spoken too late. Veyra had vanished below. Morvayn stood rigid near the dais, his injured wrist held against his chest, his face stripped of all courtly softness. Majesty, that stair leads to sealed ritual ground. Only the Luna House has authority beneath it. Kael did not look at him. Then the Luna House has been hiding things under my hall. Morvayn's lips thinned. For your protection. The traitor's collar gave a low click. Not enough to choke him. Enough to mark the answer. Kael heard it. So did Nara. He turned toward the guards. No one leaves this hall. No counselor. No noble. No scribe with marked hands. A few men protested at once. Kael's wolf shadow rose behind him, still thin, still sick, but taller than before. The protests died. Then he looked at Nara. Do you have to go down? The question unsettled her more than an order would have. Orders were easy to hate. This left room for choice, and choice was more frightening when the wrong answer could still kill her. The collar warmed once. Below, Nara swallowed. It wants me to hear what they buried. Kael's jaw tightened. Then I go first. No. His eyes cut to hers. She forced herself not to step back. The collars are breathing. Not for you. A muscle moved in his cheek. You think I will let you walk into that alone? I think if you lead, they may close before I can hear them. The words landed between them, sharp and dangerous. For a moment, she expected the Alpha King to ignore her. Men in power liked bravery only when it obeyed. But Kael stepped aside. Not away. Aside. Then I follow. The stair was narrow, carved from black stone, veined with moon silver. Nara descended with one hand near the wall, the collar's light spreading over each step before her foot touched it. Kael followed close enough that his shadow brushed the wall beside hers, but not close enough to trap her. Behind them came 2 royal guards carrying blue flame torches. Morvayn was dragged after them by order of the king, his face pale with fury. The old wolf captain followed without being asked. The air changed halfway down. It grew thick with old breath. At the bottom waited a circular chamber built beneath the royal hall, like a second throat under the kingdom's tongue. Iron collars hung from the walls in rows. Some were small, some were broken, some were black with age. Each one rested on a hook, shaped like a wolf fang, and beneath every hook a name had been scratched, then partly scraped away. Nara forgot how to move. There were hundreds, not relics, records. Kael's torchlight trembled across the nearest collar. The name beneath it had been almost removed, but one word remained. Val. Nara reached toward it. The traitor's collar at her throat clicked once. A whisper came from the old iron on the wall. I saw the red flare buried. Nara snatched her hand back. Another collar breathed. I carried the horn order and was told it never existed. Another. I signed because my sons were in the king's army. Another. I heard Captain Vale speak true. The chamber filled with dead testimony. Kael went still beside her. His wolf shadow pressed low to the ground, shaking. The old wolf captain covered his mouth with one hand. By the old moon. Nara turned slowly, following the whispers. They were not random. They moved in a circle around the room, each caller handing breath to the next, until the sound led to a forge at the far end of the chamber. It was cold. No flame burned inside it. Still, the iron around Nara's throat heated until pain kissed her skin. Morvain tried to step back. Kael seized his collar and shoved him forward. "What is this place?" Morvain said nothing. The traitor's collar answered for him. "Throat forge." The words scraped through the chamber. Kael's face hardened. "Explain." Morvain's gaze moved toward the forge, then toward Nara. "The old kings used it during oath wars," he said. "False witnesses were bound here. Their lies fed the collar law." Nara looked at the rows of iron. These were not false witnesses. Morvain's mouth tightened. The silence was answer enough. The collar at Nara's throat burned brighter. A hidden compartment opened beneath the forge with a metallic groan. Inside lay a strip of dark iron, a broken rope fiber, and a blood-black wolf tooth. Nara knew the tooth before anyone named it. Her father had worn it around his neck the day he died. The chamber tilted. Kael reached one hand toward her, then stopped before touching her arm. "Nara!" She could not answer. The forge breathed. Then her father's voice came from it, not like the collar's command, but like a man speaking through blood. "They did not hang my oath with me." Nara's knees nearly failed. Kael moved then, not to hold her, but to stand beside her so the room could not swallow her alone. Edrin Vale's voice continued. "They cut it out before the rope dropped. Morvain held the tongs. Veyra's mother sealed the flame. They forged my warning into a collar so it would punish every throat except the ones that ordered the lie." Morvain snarled. "Your father died a traitor because the kingdom needed one." The nearest 20 collars snapped open on their hooks. Kael turned on him with murder in his eyes. But Nara lifted one shaking hand. "Wait." The word surprised them both. Her father's voice had not finished. The cold forge glowed blue-white, and inside the light appeared a memory. Edrin Vale bound to an iron chair, blood at his mouth, his throat marked with moon, silver cuts. Morvain stood before him with black tongs. Beside the forge stood a younger woman with Veyra's pale hair and cruel calm. Luna Marielle, Veyra's mother. Edrin's head lifted in the memory. "If my daughter lives," he rasped, "the oath will know her throat." Morvain leaned close. "Then we will make sure she spends her life too ashamed to use it." Nara stopped breathing. The memory shifted. A small girl hid behind a stone pillar at the chamber door. Nara, 8 years old. Her own forgotten memory returned with such force that she staggered. She had been here. She had heard screaming below the hall. Someone had carried her away before she could understand. The collar around her throat opened slightly wider, not falling off, changing. On its inner rim, beside Edrin Vale's name, new letters burned into the iron. Truth Throat Air. Morvain's face went gray. Kael read the words aloud. The chamber answered with every collar on the walls. Air, air, air. Then a scream cut through the chamber from the passage beyond the forge. Veyra, not fleeing now, begging. The blue light inside the forge twisted toward a second door, half hidden behind hanging chains. And from beyond it came the sound of a living wolf, crying with a collar around its throat. Veyra's scream came again from beyond the chain-hidden door. Not elegant, not noble, terrified. Kael moved first, but Nara caught the sound beneath the scream and stepped in front of him before she could think better of it. He stopped at once. That frightened her almost as much as the door. An alpha king should not stop because a servant girl lifted one hand. Yet Kael did, his golden eyes cutting down to her fingers, then to the traitor's collar burning at her throat. "What do you hear?" he asked. Nara listened. Beyond the second door, something living dragged breath through iron. Not a human throat. A wolf's. But the sound was wrong. A wolf should breathe from chest, fang, lung, and moon. This one breathed like every inhale had to pass through a law written by men who feared it. "It is not calling for her," Nara said. Kael's face sharpened. "Then who?" Nara swallowed. "You." The chains over the hidden door tightened by themselves. Morvayn laughed once, hoarse and bitter. Careful, Majesty. Some doors were sealed because even kings survived better without opening them. Kael seized one of the chains. The moment his fingers touched the black iron, every collar on the walls snapped toward him. Nara shouted, "Don't!" "To late." The chain burned blue-white. Kael's body went rigid, and his wolf shadow behind him collapsed against the stone, jaws open in a silent howl. The living wolf beyond the door cried out with him. Nara grabbed the traitor's collar at her own throat, not to remove it, to make it answer. Let him go. The words left her like a command she had no right to give. The chain released Kael. He staggered back one step, breathing hard, his hand burned across the palm. Nara reached toward the wound, then stopped before touching him. She remembered how people looked when pity felt like ownership. Kael saw the restraint. His voice roughened. "Thank you." The collar warmed. "Truth." Nara looked away first. The hidden door clicked. One chain fell, then another. The chamber beyond opened into a narrow vault carved directly beneath the throne. Moon-silver veins ran through the walls like frozen lightning. In the center stood a giant black wolf, larger than any natural beast, its fur matted with shadow, its ribs visible under its hide. A brutal iron muzzle circled its jaws. Around its neck was a second collar, wider than Nara's, forged from dark iron and hundreds of small silver teeth. Each tooth held a trapped howl. Kael stopped breathing. His wolf shadow vanished from the wall. The beast in the vault lifted its head. The Alpha King whispered, "No." The wolf's golden eyes opened. They were Kael's. Nara felt the truth hit the room like winter-breaking glass. The dying shadow in the court had never been the whole wolf, only what leaked through. The real one had been here, muzzled beneath the throne, fed by lies until its body forgot how to stand. Vera crouched against the far wall, her white gown torn, one hand bleeding where the broken truth stones had bitten into her skin. She looked at Kael with wild eyes. "I did not know it was alive," she said. The collar at Nara's throat clicked. Not false. Not whole. Nara understood. Vera had known there was a sealed wolf beneath the throne. She had not known it still suffered. Kael did not look at her. His gaze stayed on the beast. "What did they do to you?" he asked. The wolf tried to answer. The muzzle tightened. Blood ran through its black fur. Nara stepped forward. Kael caught himself before reaching for her, his hand closing around empty air. "Nara, if I do not hear it, they will keep naming its pain for it." The wolf's eyes moved to her. She expected hatred, hunger, wildness. Instead, she saw exhaustion so old, it felt human. The traitor's collar loosened at her throat. The larger collar around the wolf answered with a dull groan. Morvayn's voice came from behind them, quiet and venomous. "The kingdom was falling apart after the Eastern Pass. Your wolf wanted to tear through every council house until it found the truth. We could not allow an Alpha King ruled by grief." Kael turned then. Slowly, Morvayn met his gaze. "We preserved you. You buried my wolf under my throne. We saved your crown from your beast." The words struck the wolf like a whip. The muzzle dug deeper. Nara stepped between them and the wolf. "Stop feeding it." Morvayn's eyes narrowed. She pointed to the collar around the beast's neck. "It tightens when you call it beast, when you call grief weakness, when you call burial preservation." The old wolf captain swore under his breath. Kael looked at Nara. "Can you open it?" "I do not know." It was becoming the answer she hated most. Her father's voice rose through her collar, faint but clear. "Not open. Read." Nara forced herself closer to the giant wolf. The beast lowered its head until its muzzle was level with her chest. Hot breath passed over her hands, smelling of blood, ash, and old rain. The wolf could have killed her with one movement, but it held still. On the larger collar, words began to surface. Not a sentence. Names. 300 names. The dead wolves of the Eastern Pass. Each silver tooth held one final howl, forged into the collar to keep Kael's wolf trapped beneath the lie that their deaths were caused by Edrin Vale. Nara's eyes burned. "This collar was not made from one oath," she said. "It was made from the dead." Kael's face went ashen. Morvayn spoke sharply. "War requires sacrifice." The wolf snarled. The muzzle cracked. Vera flinched and whispered, "Mother said the howls were needed to keep the crown stable." Kael looked at her at last. "Your mother built this?" Vera's mouth trembled. She said the Luna house must protect the throne from wolves too strong to grieve properly. Nara turned toward her. "Where is she?" Vera's silence answered too slowly. The collar around Nara's throat heated. Vera closed her eyes. "Dead. False." The word did not come from Nara. It came from the giant wolf. The muzzle split down the center. Everyone froze. The wolf had spoken through broken iron. Vera shook her head, tears cutting through ash on her face. No, she died 2 winters after the pass. The giant wolf's eyes burned brighter. False. Nara looked at the collar around the beast's neck. The names of the dead wolves shifted, forming a path of silver teeth toward one larger mark at the back of the iron. A crescent brand. The mark of the old moon temple. Morvain lunged toward Vera. Kael moved faster, slamming him against the wall with one hand at his throat. "Where is Luna Marielle?" Kael asked. Morvain smiled through the pressure. "Where every useful lie goes when the court outgrows it." The chamber floor opened beneath the giant wolf. Not falling. Revealing. A deeper vault, lit by red moonfire, with a stone altar, a crown of wolf bones, and a woman's shadow seated beneath it. Nara's collar went cold for the first time. The giant wolf lowered its wounded head and spoke one more word through the broken muzzle. "Mother." The giant wolf called into the red vault with one broken word. "Mother." Kael Veyr still. Not like a king hearing a threat. Like a son hearing a grave answer back. The chamber beneath the wolf opened wider, stone teeth grinding apart until the hidden vault lay exposed below them. Red moonfire burned without smoke around a circular altar. Above it hung a crown made from small wolf bones, each bone threaded with black oath wire. Beneath the crown sat a woman's shadow, thin and faded, her head bowed as if she had been waiting too long to lift it. Vera began shaking. "That is not my mother," she whispered. Nara looked at Kael. His face had lost all blood. "No," he said, but the word had no command in it. The giant wolf lowered its muzzle toward the vault. The cracked iron around its jaws scraped softly as it breathed. "Mother." The woman's shadow stirred. A voice rose from the red moonfire, soft with ruin. "Kael." The Alpha King gripped the edge of the broken floor so hard the stone split under his fingers. Nara did not ask who she was. She already knew from the way his dying wolf tried to crawl toward her. Queen Nara Vale, Kael's mother, dead for 15 years. At least, that was what the kingdom had been told. Morvain laughed under Kael's hand, though his throat was still trapped against the wall. "Careful, Majesty. Some ghosts are more dangerous than enemies." Kael slammed him harder into the stone. "What did you do?" The red moonfire answered instead. A memory opened above the altar. Queen Saran stood in the old moon temple, younger and alive, her black hair braided with silver wolf thread, her hands pressed to Kael's face. He was barely 17 in the vision, not yet king, his wolf shadow enormous behind him. A messenger arrived with news from the Eastern Pass. 300 wolves dead, Captain Edrin Vale accused, council records sealed. Kael in the memory turned toward the doors with murder already waking in his shadow. Saran caught his wrist. "Not before truth," she told him. "I will tear the council apart. You will find truth first, then tear what deserves tearing." The giant wolf behind present Kael made a broken sound. The memory shifted. Saran stood later in this very red vault, bound to the altar. Luna Marielle, younger and coldly beautiful, stood beside Morvain. The bone crown hung above Saran's head. Marielle spoke with calm conviction. "If the boy follows his wolf, he will destroy every house before we can shape the succession." Saran lifted her bloody mouth. "If you fear a wolf that seeks truth, you are already guilty." Morvain placed black tongs into the moonfire. Marielle lowered the bone crown. "We do not fear truth," she said. "We fear a king who loves it more than rule." The crown dropped onto Saran's shadow. Kael made a sound that was almost not human. Nara stepped closer to him without touching. The memory darkened. Saran's final oath tore from her body as red light. "Let my son's wolf never be chained by a lie. Marielle Smille. Then we will chain it with your protection." The oath twisted. The bone crown swallowed it. Nara understood with a sickness so deep, it felt like falling. They used her oath backward. The traitor's collar at her throat clicked. Truth. Kael released Morvain. Not mercy. Because if he held him one moment longer, he might kill him before the truth finished. Morvain slid down the wall, coughing. Your mother wanted to protect you. We only gave her oath structure. Structure? Kael's voice was flat. A crown. A muzzle. A limit. The giant wolf lunged. The iron collar around its neck snapped tight, and the 300 silver teeth flared with dead howls. The beast crashed to the ground, claws carving trenches into stone. Nara ran to it. Kael caught her arm before she reached the muzzle, then released her instantly, horror flashing through his eyes. I am sorry. She heard the truth in it. The collar warmed. Nara held his gaze for one breath. Then help me read, not break. He nodded. Together they approached the fallen wolf. The beast's eye rolled toward Nara. Pain filled it, but no threat. She placed her hands near the larger collar, not on it. The traitor's collar at her throat brightened, casting blue-white light across the silver teeth. Names moved there, not only the dead from the eastern pass. Nara Vale, King Kael Veyr, Nara Vale. 2 oaths. One mother's protection, one father's warning, both twisted into weapons. Nara's breath shook. My father's oath can make it speak. Your mother's oath can make it survive, but neither can open it alone. Kael looked at the wolf. What does it need? The answer came from Saran's shadow. A king who will not punish grief. The words cut him. Nara saw the old wound open inside him. Years of being told his wolf was too savage, too unstable, too dangerous to be trusted. Years of ruling from a throne built over its pain. Kael knelt before the giant beast. The court above could not see him now. Only Nara, Veyr, Morvain, the old captain, and the dead queen's shadow. I was taught your rage would ruin us, Kael said to his wolf. I believed them because believing them made me useful. The wolf's breathing shuddered. Kael lowered his head. I will not call you beast again. The muzzle cracked wider. Red moonfire flared around the bone crown. Veyr suddenly cried out. The broken truth stones at her throat lifted, dragging her toward the altar by invisible chains. Nara turned. Veyr clawed at the necklace, terror raw now. I did not bind her. I was a child. The stones tightened. Morvain smiled from the floor, blood on his teeth. But you inherited the seal. Veyr stared at him. What? The red vault answered. A final memory opened. Marielle, kneeling before a little girl with pale hair. Young Veyr cried as her mother clasped the truth, stone necklace around her throat. Wear this sweetly, Marielle whispered. If the king's wolf ever hears the buried horn, your stones will swallow the sound before it reaches him. Veyr's knees buckled. No. Nara watched her face break, and for the first time saw something beneath the polished Luna mask that was not cruelty. A child raised as a lock. Still guilty. Still a lock. The bone crown above Serane's shadow began to descend toward the giant wolf. Morvain pushed himself upright. The seal completes if the wolf remembers too much. Kael stood. Nara moved beside him. The larger collar around the wolf's throat opened one silver tooth. Inside it, one trapped howl escaped. Then another. Then the whole vault began to shake with the voices of the dead eastern wolves. And through them, Nara Valer's shadow lifted her head at last. Truth, throat air, she said to Nara. Do not open the wolf, open the witnesses. The first trapped howl escaped the silver tooth and became a man's voice. My name was Rovan Hale. I died at the eastern pass with my throat full of smoke and no horn to guide us home. The vault went silent around him. Even the red moonfire seemed to lower itself. Nara stood before Kael's bound wolf, one hand pressed near her own collar, the other hovering over the larger iron ring without touching it. Nara Valer's shadow had told her not to open the wolf. Open the witnesses. Now she understood why. If she broke the wolf's collar first, the court would call it rage. If the witnesses spoke first, rage would have a name. Another silver tooth opened. My name was Taryn Moss. I saw blue fire on the council tower before the enemy crossed. Another. My name was Ilric Vale. I carried Captain Edrin's warning to the inner gate. The gatemaster was already dead. Another. My name was Senna of the East Watch. The horn rope had been cut. The names struck the chamber one after another. Not ghosts. Witnesses. Each voice rose from a silver tooth on the wolf's collar, then passed into the old collars hanging on the walls. Iron mouths opened. Scraped away names burned back into place. The dead were returning as testimony. Morvain staggered toward the forge, face gray with fury. Dead soldiers cannot stand in royal court. Kael looked at him. They died in mine. The collar at Nara's throat warmed. Truth. Veyr had stopped fighting the necklace. The broken truth stones dug into her skin, drawing thin lines of blood down her throat. Her eyes were fixed on the bone crown above Saran's shadow. My mother used the dead wolves, she whispered. Nara looked at her. She used their last howls. Veyr flinched. Good. Some words needed teeth. The old collars on the wall began breathing faster. Their voices overlapped, forming a path of testimony around the chamber. Sealed orders, altered signals, names removed from rolls, bodies counted under the wrong banner. The Eastern Pass had not fallen from one betrayal. It had been arranged like a funeral before the battle began. Kael's wolf lifted its head, iron muzzle cracked open, golden eyes burning with grief. The bone crown above Saran descended another inch. Morvain smiled. The more the dead speak, the more the seal tightens. That is how Marielle built it. Every witness feeds the crown unless a living throat completes the record. Nara's blood went cold. Of course, the dead could accuse, but the living had to carry the consequence. Kael turned toward Morvain. Then you will speak. Morvain laughed. I gave no false testimony. I gave orders through proper mouths. The collar did not touch him. Again, silence protected him. Nara hated how cleanly he had built his evil. He had made himself a shadow behind voices, a hand behind seals, a will behind frightened women and obedient scribes. Then the words from her father's oath returned. Oath remembers the hand. Nara looked down. The black letters burned across the guilty palms upstairs had led them here. Throats could hide, hands could not. But the chamber below held no marked palms except the few who had descended. Her gaze moved to Veyr's hands. Pale, shaking, bloodless, untouched by letters. Veyr followed her eyes. I was a child. You were, Nara said. The collar warmed. Truth. Nara took one step closer. And now? Veyr's lips parted. Morvain's head snapped toward her. Lady Veyr. The warning in his voice did what kindness never had. It stripped away the last piece of her performance. Veyr looked at Kael, then at his suffering wolf, then at Saran's shadow held beneath her mother's bone crown. My mother is not dead, she said. The red moonfire surged. Morvain lunged. Kael caught him by the throat and slammed him down to his knees. Veyr sobbed once, but kept speaking. Marielle left Blackmere under funeral veils. I was told the body was burned, but I saw her after. Beneath the old moon temple, she said the kingdom needed a Luna who could smile while carrying locks. The truth stones on her necklace began cracking faster. One shard pierced her skin. She choked. Nara moved before Kael could command anything. She seized the broken necklace. Pain shot through her palm, sharp and freezing. The truth stones tried to swallow her voice, tried to drag the eastern horn and the dead witnesses back into silence. For a breath, Nara felt the old spell press at her throat, offering her the familiar role: servant, traitor's daughter, quiet girl, who survived by not becoming the center of a room. Her collar answered with her father's oath. My daughter did not inherit silence. Nara pulled. The necklace broke. Veyr collapsed to the floor, gasping, free of the stones for the first time in her adult life. The stolen sounds burst upward. The eastern horn, the council bell, the red flare order, Edrin Vale's warning, Saran's protection oath, and 300 wolves' final howls. They circled the vault like a storm of throats. The bone crown cracked. Saran's shadow lifted both hands. Now, she said. Nara turned to the old collars on the walls. Witnesses, she said, her voice shaking but clear. Breathe. Every collar opened. The chamber exploded with names. Hundreds of erased witnesses spoke at once, but Nara heard the pattern beneath them. Not chaos. A record. The truth moved from the eastern pass to the council tower, From the tower to Luna House, from Luna House to the old moon temple. Then every voice stopped on one name. Marielle. The red moonfire bent toward the floor and burned a crescent-shaped doorway through the stone. Beyond it stretched a tunnel of white roots and black ice, leading away from the palace. Morvaine's smile returned, bloodied and bitter. She will kill the witnesses before they reach her. Kael's wolf forced itself to stand. The iron collar around its neck groaned. Kael stepped toward it. Nara caught his gaze, not stopping him, warning him. If you break it in anger, they will call the wolf a monster. Kael's face tightened with pain. His wolf trembled, desperate to run. Then the Alpha King lowered his hand. Then we take the witnesses with us. The old collars lifted from the walls, each one carrying a reclaimed name in blue-white fire. They circled Nara, not as chains, but as testimony. The crescent doorway opened wider. From far down the tunnel came a woman's voice, smooth as moonlight, over a blade. Bring the traitor's daughter to me. I want to hear whether her throat breaks like her father's. The tunnel under the palace did not smell like earth. It smelled like old verdicts. White roots twisted through black ice above Nara's head, each root threaded with tiny scraps of blue fire. The reclaimed collars floated around her in a slow circle, carrying names that had been scraped from records, burned from war rolls, or swallowed by truth stones. Their light turned the tunnel walls into a moving archive of faces. Kael walked at her side. Not ahead, not behind. Beside her, one hand near his blade, the other still burned from the chain that had tried to keep him from his own wolf. Behind them, the old wolf captain guided Veyr, whose throat was bare for the first time since childhood. Morvaine walked bound between two guards, but his eyes remained too calm. Calm men were dangerous when they had already lost the room behind them. From far ahead, Marielle's voice drifted again. Do not be afraid, Nara Vale. Your father screamed only once. Kael's jaw tightened. Nara kept walking. The traitor's collar warmed at her throat, not with comfort but warning. Marielle wanted anger. She wanted the Alpha King's wolf to break its restraint and prove every old lie true. A grieving king was easier to name monster than a patient one. Nara looked at Kael without turning her head. She wants you to run first. I know. His voice was rough enough to make the floating collars tremble. Will you? His gold eyes cut to hers. For a moment, the tunnel held only their breathing and the faint scrape of old iron. No, he said, but I may want to. The collar warmed. Truth. Something inside Nara softened, despite the fear. Not because his restraint made him gentle. It did not. Kael Veyr still carried enough violence in his body to fill the tunnel, but he had stopped, pretending violence was the same as strength. The passage opened into the old moon temple. It had been built beneath the roots of Blackmere long before the royal hall above it. Pale stone pillars rose from a frozen pool, each carved with wolves whose mouths had been sealed by silver nails. Red moonfire burned in bowls along the walls, turning every shadow sharp. At the center of the temple stood Luna Marielle. She was older than the memory, but not weakened by age. Her pale hair fell like moonlit silk over a black gown, and around her shoulders rested a mantle of white wolf fur. Above her, brow hovered the bone crown from Saron's vault, cracked but not broken. Behind her stood 3 stone frames filled with hanging collars. Not old ones, fresh ones, empty, waiting. Veyr made a broken sound. Mother. Marielle's gaze slid to her daughter. You removed the necklace. Veyr flinched. It was choking me. It was teaching you silence. The words were soft. That made them worse. Kael stepped forward, but Nara touched, 2 fingers to the air between them. Not his chest, not his arm. Just the space. He stopped. Marielle saw it and smiled. How quickly the traitor's daughter learns to handle kings. Nara lifted her chin. How long did it take you to handle your own child? The smile thinned. One of the floating witness collars snapped open, as if it approved. Marielle's eyes moved to the circle of reclaimed iron. You brought my lost witnesses back. They were never yours. No, they were Blackmere's. Marielle turned slowly, letting her voice fill the temple. A kingdom survives by deciding which truths may breathe. Your father did not understand that. Seraine did not understand that. Kael's wolf did not understand that. Kael's voice cut low. And 300 wolves died because you did? Marielle looked at him then, and for the first time her mask showed something like grief. Not guilt, grief for power wounded. The Eastern Pass was already failing. Rival packs had bought half the border guard. If the truth came out, Blackmere would have torn itself apart before winter. We needed one traitor. One name strong enough to carry the ruin. Nara's fingers curled. My father. He was loved, Marielle said. That made him useful. The traitor's collar clicked. Kael's wolf cried from far behind them, still trapped in the vault beneath the throne. The sound reached the temple through root and stone. Marielle lifted one hand. The bone crown brightened. The wolf's cry cut off. Kael staggered as if struck through the ribs. Nara stepped toward Marielle. The floating collars moved with her. Release his wolf. Not until the record is sealed properly. Marielle gestured to the 3 empty collars behind her. One for the traitor's daughter. One for the failed Luna. One for the king who loved truth too late. Vera went white. Morvayn finally smiled. She warned you, Majesty. Some lies are load-bearing. Nara turned on him. And some men hide behind women. They train to carry locks. The collar around her throat blazed. Morvayn's bound hands jerked. For the first time, black letters appeared across his fingers. Not on his throat. Not his palm. Under his nails. Ordered sealed horn. Ordered false flare. Ordered Edrin Vale's oath extraction. Morvayn screamed. Marielle's eyes sharpened. Truth. Throat air indeed. Nara felt the temple shift toward her. The sealed wolf mouths on the pillars cracked open. Not fully, just enough for breath. Marielle saw it too. Her hand shot toward the bone crown. Then let us test the throat. Red moonfire erupted under Nara's feet, forming a circle of oath script. The floating witness collars slammed downward, forced into a ring around her. Kael lunged, but the frozen pool rose between them like glass. Nara stood trapped at the center of the old moon temple. Marielle's voice became ceremonial. Name the traitor of the Eastern Pass, Nara Vale. The traitor's collar tightened for the first time. Not enough to kill. Enough to warn her that the answer had teeth. If she said Morvayn, Marielle's deeper truth survived. If she said Marielle, Morvayn's orders survived. If she said Veyra, a child raised as a lock would become the story. The court had always wanted one throat to carry all blame. Nara finally understood the trap. Her father had died because he refused to give them a single convenient lie. Kael struck the glass between them with both fists. Cracks spread, but did not break. Nara, Marielle smiled. Answer air. Nara closed her eyes. Around her, the witness collars breathed. Behind the temple walls, Kael's bound wolf dragged one broken breath through iron. Nara opened her eyes. No. The old moon temple went silent. Marielle's smile faded. Nara's voice shook, but it did not break. I will not name one traitor, so the rest may live clean. The traitor's collar opened. All 7 teeth turned outward toward the entire temple, and every sealed wolf carved into the pillars opened its mouth at once. Every sealed wolf carved into the pillars opened its mouth at once. No howl came first. Names did. They poured through the old moon temple like water breaking through a dam. Rovenhale, Sina of the East Watch, Ilric Vale, Master Torin of the Horn Tower, Gatewife Elson, Red Flare Boy Marden, Captain Edrin Vale. Hundreds of names. Not ghosts begging. Witnesses returning. The frozen glass wall between Nara and Kael trembled as the voices filled the temple. The bone crown above Marielle's brow flickered, its cracked white points jerking as if each name struck it from within. Morvayn writhed on his knees, black letters burning under his nails. Vera pressed both hands to her bare throat, staring at the open wolf mouths with the horror of someone hearing the lullaby she had been raised inside turn into a trial. Marielle lifted her hand. Silence. For one breath, the temple obeyed. Then Edrin Vale's voice came from the traitor's collar. No. The collars around Nara rose from the floor. Not as chains now, as witnesses circling their air. Marielle's eyes narrowed. A dead captain does not command my temple. Nara looked at her through the ring of iron. It was never your temple. You only nailed the mouths shut. The wolf mouths opened wider. One by one, the pillars spoke the full record. The eastern horn rope was cut before moonrise. The red flare was removed from the pass tower. The council bell rang early to draw the reserve wolves west. The inner gate was sealed from Blackmere's side. Captain Edrin Vale sent warning before the enemy crossed. Lord Morvayn ordered the warning buried. Luna Marielle made the lie survivable. Marielle's perfect face did not change until the last line. Then the bone crown cracked again. Kael struck the glass once more. This time he did not strike with rage. He placed both hands against it and looked at Nara. How? The question reached her through the frozen wall. Not command. Trust. Nara looked at the oath script burning under her feet. The old trap still waited. It wanted a single traitor, one name to carry the kingdom's rot so the rest could stand clean again. She raised her voice. Witnesses do not name one throat when many hands held the knife. The temple shook. The oath script under her feet split into pieces. Marielle's control faltered it. Kael pressed his burned palm to the glass. Then I witnessed too. Marielle turned sharply. You cannot. You were the wounded party. Kael's expression darkened. I was also the king who believed the lie. The glass cracked. Nara felt those words cut deeper than any royal command could have. Not because they saved her, because they cost him. Kael looked past her to the wolf pillars. I let Captain Edrin's daughter scrub my floors under a traitor's name. I let council record become law because grief made obedience easier than doubt. I punished no liar because the lie had already wounded me enough to feel true. The glass cracked again. His voice lowered. I witnessed my failure. The frozen wall shattered. Marielle screamed and drove both hands toward the bone crown. Red moonfire surged from the pool, twisting into chains that flew toward Kael's throat, Veyra's throat, and Nara's collar at once. Morvayn laughed through pain, dragging himself toward the altar. If the king confesses weakness, he gasped, the throne breaks. Kael stepped into the red chain before it reached Nara. It wrapped around his neck. His wolf cried out beneath the palace. But Kael did not tear at the chain. He stood inside it, breathing hard, eyes fixed on Nara. Marielle smiled with sudden triumph. There. A king who admits failure becomes unfit to hold the pack. Nara heard the lie in the sentence. Not in Marielle's throat. In the crown. The bone crown fed on the idea that kings must never confess, that wolves must never grieve, that daughters must carry silence, that one useful traitor could save a kingdom from seeing itself. Nara turned to Veyra. Your mother's crown is still using your throat. Veyra shook her head, tears bright on her face. I have no necklace. No, Nara said, but you still have the lesson. The words struck harder than accusation. Veyra looked at Marielle, then at Kael, choking under the red chain, then at Morvayn, crawling toward the altar, still trying to preserve the lie that had made her valuable. Her voice came small. Mother. Marielle did not look at her. Be silent. That did it. Veyra stood, not gracefully, not as a Luna candidate, as a daughter finally hearing the shape of the cage. No. The temple flared. Marielle's head snapped toward her. Veyra lifted both hands. I was trained to swallow the horn. I wore the stones. I redirected questions. I smiled when they called Edrin traitor because the truth would have made me useless to you. The wolf pillars listened. Veyra's voice broke, but continued. I witness Luna Marielle of the Old Moon Temple. I witness Lord Morvayn. I witness the Luna House. I witness myself. The red chain around Kael weakened. Morvayn lunged for the altar. Nara moved first. The floating collars shot with her, striking the floor around Morvayn in a circle of blue-white iron. He fell inside it, hands clawing at stone as the black letters under his nails spread up his fingers. Ordered sealed horn. Ordered false flare. Ordered oath extraction. Ordered scapegoat record. For the first time, the traitor's collar reached his throat. Not because he had spoken a lie, because every hand he had used had finally spoken back. Invisible iron closed around him. Morvayn tried to laugh. Only a rasp came out. Marielle's face twisted with rage. She tore the bone crown from above her brow and slammed it toward Nara. Then let the air carry all of it. The crown flew like a white wolf's jaw. Kael tried to move, but the weakened red chain still held him. Nara did not run. The traitor's collar opened fully around her throat. Every witness collar circled behind her. Every wolf mouth in the temple breathed in. The bone crown struck the air before her chest and stopped. Inside its cracked bones, Nara heard thousands of swallowed truths, crushed small enough to become law. Her father's oath rose through her. Not all guilt needs a throat. Her own voice followed. But every truth needs breath. She exhaled. The sound that left her was not a scream. It was the eastern horn, full, unburied, alive. The horn blast shattered the bone crown. Red moonfire turned blue-white. The chain around Kael broke. The iron around Morvaine's throat tightened until his knees struck stone. The false seals on the temple pillars burst open, and the names of the dead eastern wolves rose like sparks into the air. Marielle staggered back, suddenly old beneath the moonfire. "No," she whispered. "Without the crown, the kingdom will remember everything." Nara stepped toward her, the broken crown pieces falling like pale teeth around her feet. "Yes." From beneath the palace, Kael's giant wolf roared. Not in pain now. In answer, the temple floor split open, revealing the path back to the throat forge and the bound wolf below the throne. Blue-white witness fire streamed upward from the old collars, carrying the restored names with it. Saran Veyr's shadow appeared in the broken flame behind Nara. "Now," the dead queen said, "let the wolf hear them clean." Kael looked at Nara through the fading fire. For once, the Alpha King did not look like a man choosing between throne and truth. He looked like a man already chosen by the cost. "Together?" he asked. Nara's heart struck once, hard. She nodded. "Together." And below the temple, the collar around the Alpha King's wolf began to break. The first silver tooth fell from the wolf's collar and struck the stone like a bell. Then another. Then 10. Then 100. Each tooth broke open as it fell, releasing a final howl that no longer sounded trapped. The voices of the eastern dead streamed through the throat forge in blue-white fire, rising around Kael's giant wolf like a storm of names. Rovan Hale, Sena of the East Watch, Ilric Vale, the gatemaster murdered before he could open, the hornboy who found the rope cut, the wolves who had died waiting for a warning Blackmere had buried. Kael stood at the edge of the broken vault, with the red chain mark still burned around his throat. Nara stood beside him, the traitor's collar open and glowing against her skin, every old witness collar circling above her like iron moons. The giant wolf trembled. Not from weakness now, from recognition. Nara lifted both hands. "Hear them clean." The wolf closed its golden eyes. The names entered it one by one. Its ribs filled out beneath black fur. The torn places in its shadow healed with blue-white fire. The brutal muzzle cracked, split, and fell away in 2 heavy pieces. When the last trapped howl dissolved into the wolf's chest, the beast lowered its head until its brow nearly touched the stone before Nara. Not submission, gratitude. Kael's breath broke. For the first time since Nara had seen him, the Alpha King looked young beneath the crown of his own pain. Not weak, stripped of the lie that had made him hard in the wrong places. The wolf turned to him. Kael stepped forward slowly. "I believed they chained you because you were dangerous," he said, voice rough. "But you were dangerous only to the men who needed silence." The wolf pressed its massive head against his chest. Kael staggered, one hand sinking into its dark fur. His shadow erupted behind him. Not thin, not dying. A vast black wolf shadow rose across the forge wall, broad-shouldered and alive, its eyes burning with the same winter gold as the king's. The chamber shook with its first full breath. Above them, in the royal hall, wolves began to howl. Not in panic. In answer, Morvaine tried to crawl toward the shattered stair. He did not get far. The traitor's collar around Nara's throat turned once. The old collars answered. Invisible iron closed around Morvaine's neck and dragged him back into the circle of fallen silver teeth. He clawed at his throat, eyes wild. "I spoke no false testimony." Nara looked down at him. "No, you trained other throats to bleed for you." The black letters under his nails spread over his hands, wrists, and arms, writing every order he had hidden behind seal, clerk, Luna House, and fear. Ordered sealed horn, ordered false flare, ordered oath extraction, forged Edrin Vale's warning, fed the Alpha's wolf a lie. Morvaine's mouth opened. For once, Nothing useful came out. The collar law spoke through the forge. Let the hand answer where the throat hid. Iron closed around his wrists first, then his arms, then his chest, not killing him, binding him into the throat forge wall among the names he had scraped away. His hands remained visible, palms open, every hidden order burning across them. As long as Blackmere stood, anyone could descend and read what Lord Chancellor Morvayn had done. Marielle stood beneath the broken bone crown, suddenly without temple, without seal, without the daughter she had raised to swallow sound. Veyr faced her from across the cracked altar. For a moment, she looked like a child again, pale, bare-throated, waiting for permission to exist. Marielle reached toward her. Veyr, come here. Veyr flinched, then stopped. No. The word was small. It still moved the old moonfire. Marielle's face hardened. I made you fit to stand beside a king. You made me a lock. I made you survive. Veyr touched the blood at her throat where the truth stones had bitten her for years. No, you made me useful. The witness collars turned toward Marielle. She lifted her chin, refusing shame even as the old temple rejected her. A kingdom cannot survive every truth. Kael's restored wolf shadow stepped behind him, filling the forge with dark power. Then it does not deserve the lie that keeps it breathing. Marielle looked at Nara with hatred sharpened by fear. And you? Will you be merciful because you have suffered? Nara thought of her father bound to the iron chair, of 8 years scrubbing floors under a traitor's name, of every servant who had lowered her eyes because truth was too expensive to feed. No, she said, I will be exact. The traitor's collar opened fully. It left her throat. For one terrible breath, Nara thought it would fall. Instead, it floated between her and Marielle, its 7 teeth facing outward. Edren Vale's voice moved through the iron one final time, quieter than before. My oath is finished when her voice is free. The collar struck Marielle's throat. She gasped. It did not crush her. It made her listen. Every witness she had sealed poured into her ears. The Eastern dead, Saran's stolen protection oath, Edren's warning, the swallowed horn, Veyr's childhood silence. Marielle dropped to her knees under the weight of what she had forced others to carry. The old moon temple opened beneath her, not as a grave, but as a chamber of witness. She would remain there, keeper of every voice she had tried to bury, unable to speak over them, unable to silence them, until each name was restored before the living court. When the last chain settled, the forge grew still. Nara touched her bare throat. Bare. No iron. No rope. No inherited shame. Kael saw the movement and looked away at once, as if the sight of her freedom was too private to claim. That mattered, more than any vow would have. They returned to the royal hall at dawn. The court that had watched Nara collared now stood trapped before the truth. Marked counselors knelt with burned hands. Scribes held, opened records. Guards who had once bound her wrists now lowered their eyes, not because she frightened them, but because they finally understood what had been done in their king's name. Kael walked to the black wolf throne. His restored wolf shadow followed, enormous and silent. He did not sit. Captain Edren Vale did not betray Blackmere, he said. The Eastern Pass was opened by council order, sealed by Luna House, and buried by false record. Every name lost beneath that lie will be restored before the pack. Nara stood below the dais, not beside the throne. Kael turned toward her in front of everyone. Nara Vale is not a traitor's daughter. The hall held its breath. She is truth, throat heir of Edren Vale's oath line. Blackmere owes her record, protection, and apology. I owe her more than I can repay. Nara met his eyes. You owe me honesty, she said. A murmur moved through the hall. Kael bowed his head. Then you will have it. And you will not call what happened here forgiveness just because you finally heard the truth. His wolf shadow lowered its head, as if accepting the wound in that sentence. No, Kael said. Forgiveness is yours to give or withhold. Justice is mine to begin. Only then did Nara climb the first step of the dais. One step, not to kneel, not to be claimed, to stand close enough that the court could see she had chosen where to place herself. Kael did not touch her, but his hand opened at his side, palm empty, waiting. Nara looked at it for a long breath. Then she placed her fingers in his. The contact was brief. Enough. The restored wolf shadow behind him exhaled, and every blue flame in the hall burned clear. Outside, the eastern horn sounded from the highest tower. This time, no stone swallowed it. This time, every wolf in Blackmere heard. Nara lifted her bare throat to the morning light and let the sound pass through her, unbroken. The collar had been forged to punish treason. Instead, it had found the men who lied, freed the wolf they buried, and returned a traitor's daughter to the truth her father died trying to speak.